paste. So I'm going to be using this as a pattern. Now when you make a custom pattern, it works best when you make it or create it in a square. So I'm going to start off by making a square here. Also, if your square is small originally, your patterns are going to tend to be smaller. And if you want larger patterns, then I would make the square larger. So keep that in mind when you're making your pattern. If you want smaller patterns, you're going to start at a smaller scale. All right. And I'm going to be using Adobe Color for my color reference. So I want the background to be this hue, this blue here. So I'm going to copy the color code. Right click, copy. And then if I double click in the fill color, this is where I could replace and add that color code. So color, so I'm going to replace the color here. Control V to paste. And if I hit enter, then that changes to this blue color here that I wanted. Okay, so that's how you copy color from Adobe Color. So now I'm going to zoom in, and I want to keep all this in one layer because I'm going to use this for the pattern. So right click, arrange, bring to front. And I'm going to make my fruit here small. And before I continue, I'm going to lock the square. I don't want it to move because I'm going to be working with a lot of small pieces. So I'm able to lock and unlock objects in a layer. So if I right click, having that object selected, and then search for lock. So right click, and it's going to be above in the controls panel. Object, inside of the object, and lock. There's also a shortcut, Control 2. So now that object is locked and I can't move it. If I want to unlock it, I'm going to go back to object and unlock, or shortcut Alt Control 2. On a PC, if you're on a Mac, it's going to be Command 2. And now I'm able to move it. So I'm going to go back and lock it. Object, lock. Selection. And I'm going to rearrange my fruits here. So your composition is going to stay within your square here. So I'm going to add a bundle of fruits on each side. And then maybe I'll have some kiwis here. Maybe some smaller ones. So it's up to you how you want to composite your pattern here. And I have each group, and I have each fruit here grouped. That way when I move them around and copy them, all the details are in place. Maybe I'll add an orange here in the center. So I'm just focusing on composition, making sure everything's balanced. I could even group all of these. I should do that. Right click group. Group. So like I mentioned before, you can have multiple groups here. Group. Group. Okay, I'm getting pretty close. I kind of like this. Okay, and I'm pretty happy with this. Yeah, I'll stick to this. I still, I'm gonna use a line segment to add some. I want to add more color here in the background. So I'm gonna use the line segment just to add more color here. So at this point, I'm just nitpicking my composition. So with the line segment, it does exactly what the name says. It creates lines. So you click and drag to make a line. And then you're going to add a stroke color to it. And then you can make that stroke wider by using the strokes panel. But I want to keep mine a little thin. I kind of want it to look like sprinkles. And I'm going to round off the ends. So right now I have flat ends. And I want to round them off in the stroke panel. And I'm just going to I'm going to spread the lines around. Just to give it a little pop of color. And it also gives it movement when you add some lines. Just a few more here. Okay, great. I think I'm happy with that. I just need to send these lines to back behind the fruit. So I'm going to select one, and if you watch the previous video, I'm going to select them all by going to select, same stroke color, and then I could right click, arrange, send. Send to back. Select same, oh sorry. Select same stroke color, object, arrange, send to back. But now it's behind the red, the blue square. So I need to send the blue square behind everything. So I'm going to unlock, Control Alt 2 on a PC. Right click, arrange, send backwards. Send to back. Okay, so I'm happy with this. Now I'm going to use this to create a pattern. So I have to make sure everything's unlocked. Make sure the square is unlocked. I'm going to select everything. So click and drag to select everything. Or click on the little circle in the layer to select everything. And I'm going to group it. So now everything's grouped. And I need my swatches panel. And then you're going to drag in your swatches. Click and drag into your swatches. So now we have a new swatch. It's called New Pattern Swatch. Now Illustrator comes with a set of patterns already. So if you open up your swatch panels, and then at the right, on the left, there's a little icon that looks like a stack of books. If you click on that, you're gonna get a different library here. You have some color swatches here, some metal, kit stuff. And then if you open up other libraries, you can find and upload libraries that you have. If you download from the internet, you can upload your personal brushes here or pattern. Okay, so now I'm going to draw a background using my pattern. So let me zoom out. Using the rectangular tool, I'm going to create a rectangle. And then if I click on my new pattern that I added to the library, make sure it's not on the stroke. So make sure the fill color is on top. And now I have a pattern of what I just created. And this could be as large as you want, or it could be any shape. It could be in a circle. And now it has a custom pattern, an original pattern. It could be inside an organic shape. So if you draw a background, you could have your pattern inside the pattern. Sorry, you could have that pattern inside the organic shape. And you could also add it inside the text. Although you do have to turn it into a vector and make it into outlines. Object, sorry, type, create outlines. Actually, let me go back. I want to make it bold so you could really see the pattern. Type, create outlines. There you go. I thought I had to expand it. So now I have my pattern inside my text. I'm going to use another color from Adobe Color here. I'm going to copy the color code. And add another background color here. Okay, so that's how you create a custom brush. Sorry, that's how you create a custom pattern. Now, like I mentioned before, Illustrator does come with some preset patterns, and you can find them in your swatches. So if you click on the Show Swatch Kinds menu, it's like a middle icon. I'll leave it here so you could see. It kind of looks like a building or a square with multiple little squares inside. You can show pattern swatches. And then in the swatch panel, if you click on that hamburger menu, which is a 3 little lines stack on top of each other, if you go to open swatch library at the bottom, open swatch library, And then there's a pattern folder here. These are the presets that come with Illustrator. There's basic graphics, decorative, and nature. Let's take a look at one of each. So Illustrator already comes with presets. Some of these patterns have a transparent background. So let me go ahead and create another pattern here with a transparent background. I'll do that in a second here. Open swatch library, patterns. Let's try nature. That's like a peacock pattern. You have a leopard pattern. That sort of looks like a snake skin. Alright, so like I mentioned before, some of these have a transparent background. So if I double click, so let's say you want to make changes to your pattern. Maybe you want to change the background or delete it. You're going to double click on the swatch. Double click. And this is the sort of like the edit mode, which you can make edits to. You can name your pattern. So I'm going. You can name it fruits. You could change what sort of grid it makes these patterns. I recommend leaving it as default grid. That seems to work the best. You could change the size of the tile. So if you want bigger squares, you could do that. And you could change the copy ratio. But I usually leave everything as default. 5 by 5. It usually works the best if you just leave everything as default. But in this edit mode, I wanted to delete the background. So I selected the object, hit delete, and now I'm going to have a transparent background. Before I exit, I'm going to hit save or done. You could save a copy. I'm going to save a copy, that way I could keep both. Or done, and it's going to replace the original pattern that you created. I'll go ahead and say save a copy. And I'm going to name it here fruit 2. And then I'll hit cancel here. So now if I select the rectangle that I created and click on my new swatch, now I have a pattern with a transparent background. Now this pattern could be used as a background. If it's a little too loud, then of course you could lower the opacity. Okay, so now, so that's how you make custom back, that's how you create custom patterns. So now for brushes, I'm going to open up my brush panel, and brushes you could find underneath window, and you have brush library, but we want brushes, okay. So when you have a brush, you could apply brushes to objects. So for example, if I want a border, if I'm going to use this as a border, I could change the border by selecting a different brush. And also, Illustrator comes with preset brushes. So there's arrows, if you want to add arrows to your border, or if you draw something with the pen tool. Let's say you want to highlight a title. You could use this kind of swoosh line to highlight a name. Or if you want to direct a person to a specific area in your design, you could use these arrows or this texture swoosh. And you could also use the line segment that we just talked about. Let's see, there's artistic calligraphy brushes, ink brushes. So if you want to add a splatter design, so that's artistic. There's decorative. So you have entire libraries here. You could also find some online and upload them here. There's some decorative brushes here. All right. So those are that's the brush panel, but you could also create your own brush. So let me walk you through that. When you create a brush, I recommend designing it horizontally and in a straight line horizontally. So I usually start off with a rectangle. So that's going to be my brush here. So I'm going to make a brush out of, I'm going to make a snake brush. Actually, I'm going to make a brush. I'll make a brush out of a brush. And then maybe I'll have some color on the tip of the brush. Maybe a red or pink, that works. And then I'm going to round off the edge here. So that sort of looks like a paintbrush. Okay, so there you go. That's my brush. And again, it could be anything as long as it's horizontal and it's a straight line. The ends could be anything you want. So that's my brush. Alright, so I'm going to select everything, group it, and then in my brush panel I'm going to click on the square with the plus sign, new brush, and it's going to be an art brush. I'm going to click OK. Then here I can name it. I will call this brush. And then leave everything as default. The width is fixed because I don't want it to move, right? I want it to look exactly the way it is. The rotation is how it draws, so the direction that it turns out when you draw it. I'll just leave everything as default. What I want to focus here is on stretch between guides here. So I'm going to click on that. So stretch between guides. So once I click on that, it's going to provide me with some guides, and I'm going to move them in. So that way, when I draw an object, everything in between the guides is going to stretch, but the front part is going to stay the same. And that's going to allow it to look like a brush. Okay? And then the direction, I want this part, the front part of the brush, to be the front. So I'm going to click on this arrow. If I click on back, then the back is going to be the front. Okay. And then let's check it. I'm going to click OK. I'll leave everything else as default. And now I could see my drawing in the brush panel. So now when I draw an object, like a rectangle, And the brushes work with strokes, so make sure you have the fill. I mean, you could have some fill color if you want, but main focus is the stroke. And then I'm going to click on my custom brush, and now I have a paintbrush. And that works with the pen tool as well. If you have zigzags, curved lines. Select. So now I have a curved brush. It could be a circle. Alright, so that's how you create a custom brush. Let me make one more before we go, or before I stop. I'm going to create one more brush. So I want to bring back my fruits here. I'm going to make one more brush. And this is going to be a pattern brush. So we made an art brush. This is going to be a pattern brush. Okay, so I'm going to select all my objects, and again click on new brush, that square with the plus sign, and this time I'm going to select pattern brush. Pattern brush work well for borders, decorative patterns, decorative borders. Click OK. And pattern brush, what element are you talking about? Maybe the gradients. Let me expand this. Let me try one more time. There's a lot of detail on those fruits, so it's going to take a little bit of time. It's processing. Let's go. Okay, perfect. Got it. So this is going to be my fruit. I should have just used one of each, but fruit pattern. So again, I'm going to leave everything as fixed, as is. For the pattern brush, you can leave everything as is and just click OK. So now I have my new pattern brush here at the bottom. So let's see what this looks like. So I made a rectangle and I'm going to add it to the stroke. So make sure you have the stroke tool on top, right? And then select on your brush. And there you go. So now I have a border brush. You could also change the size of your brush. So these fruits look a little too big. So I'm going to lower the stroke weight or point. Lower the stroke point. It's processing. There you go. Let me zoom in. So now you have some nice patterns. Okay, so I'll stop here. We just covered how to create custom patterns, how to create custom art brushes, and how to create custom pattern brushes.